Well, Dom, in Australia, mate.
Here I am.
Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Been over here the last, 4 or 5 days, something like that now.
About that, yeah.
And it's been a very, very busy time. We dragged you across to Sydney, went and met up with James Casey, a whole heap of other crew over there, Jeremy. It's been a whirlwind.
You could say it's been non-stop, yeah, that's for sure. But you know, it's a short time over here. We want to make it, make every minute count.
Of course.
Certainly, I think we can say we've done that.
Yeah. Straight off the plane, straight to James Casey's course in Wollongong, and just straight in the water, 48 hours. And then you're trying to complain that you weren't performing as you normally would, and we're like, mate, all the excuses in the world you've got.
Lots of excuses, yeah. Foil too small, board too small. No, it was all great. I mean, after I don't know how many hours it was on the plane. To be honest, I didn't even notice that. The adrenaline levels were so high. I was just stoked to be out there and, well, first of all with you guys, and then the opportunity to foil in proper Aussie waves. That is just too good to be true. Never going to turn that down.
Yeah.
2 days in freezing cold temperatures, high winds. We really turned it on for you, unfortunately.
Yes, it is the way that it is. I mean, I'd like to say I'm used to it being from the UK, but having lived for the last 8 years in Oman, no, I'm acclimatised to a slightly different level of temperature.
At least the Aussie wildlife turned it on. We get to the top of Bald Hill on the way down to Wollongong, just south of Sydney. As soon as we pull up, just whales breaching, kangaroos.
2 hours in country, whales breaching, scratching kangaroos under the chin. It's like
koala in the tree
right.
at home here in Adelaide.
Yeah, it's a little bit of everything for sure. It's been good.
Very good. Well, it's been awesome to have you over here, and we just thought we'd just catch up with you and just find out about your foiling sort of history and were you majorly into, because you're from the UK, and living in Oman.
Yeah, I'm a teacher,
Yep.
so I taught science in UK schools for over 9 years.
Mm-hmm.
Fancied an adventure. My kids were of an age that they could come out with me and study for their exams.
Yep.
Got a job in a really good school in Oman,
Mm-hmm.
and the rest is history, as they say. Just loving life out there. I only intended to stay 4 years. This is my 8th year there now. And I don't know whether I'd have stayed there quite as long if it wasn't for foiling, because every day I can get on the water.
Got it pretty good.
Granted, conditions are usually light wind, small swell, but as I think we'll discover during this little chat, I'll be able to tell exactly how I managed to achieve it and what's helped in that learning journey.
So were you into water sports when you were back in the UK, or have you always grown up surfing or in the water, or
never
wind
surfing?
Sports, or
Never surfing. This is the one water sport that I haven't done. I've done wakeboarding, wake surfing, wind surfing, kite surfing, even a bit of sailing when I was really young, but never had the conditions that let me do proper surfing. When I first arrived in Oman, I had some of my kite surfing kit with me, and I thought, we'll give that a go. But the conditions weren't what I was,
It's not super windy.
Yeah, it's not super windy, and there's always chop. So I'm for kite surfing, I used to have either total flat water or waves, proper waves.
Yeah.
And there was neither really. It was always just mushy wind-blown swell.
Yeah.
And I didn't like it for kite surfing, so I got into sup surfing.
Yeah.
And I really loved that. Did that for about 3 years. Then went on holiday to France with my partner, and she showed me this video of Derek Hamasaki on this subfoil, just linking waves, doing some incredible turns on the wave face. And I was like, right, in a year I want to be doing that. And then everything else just faded into the distance.
So how long ago is that now? That's
wow. It's got to be at least 3 years.
Yeah. Because it's pretty cool. You talk to all these people foiling, and you're like, how long have you been foiling for? And a lot of people say a year, 18 months. A lot of guys got into it, and girls got into it around, I think, COVID and all that kind of stuff, when there's more, more time at home and more things to try, more toys. But a lot of people.
Still a new sport relative to surfing, which has been around
completely.
for decades.
Yeah, for sure.
It was definitely before COVID. Exactly how long before COVID, I can't tell you. But my wing foiling had got to the level where I was jibing competently. I was sort of learning tacks. and I was beginning to teach myself to read the ocean, downwind swell type thing. But that's always on a big wing with a big board, big foil at that stage.
Yeah.
And COVID hit, and for a while the beaches were still open in Oman, and I could go out and wing foil. Then they closed the beaches, and the only thing that I could do was, because the marinas were still open, the only thing I could do was go out on, I've got a quarter share in a 30-foot twin outboard engine boat.
Right.
So I would take the boat out after work, anchor up behind some little island or a little sort of bay, and just jump off my boats. Some of the times I'd land on my foil, and eventually I taught myself to dock start and flat water pump, and that was a long, hard process, but it did me so much good. And if I hadn't have done that, I think my learning curve would still be, I'd be a lot further back.
Yeah.
Being able to pump on flat water just helps with every single.
Gives you that.
And the
discipline
foils have
actually
come
learning.
such a long way since then. So what was the first sort of foil setup? Like, what brand did you jump on to start with?
It looked like a big whale fin, literally. It was the GoFoil Maliko 280.
Yeah.
Huge, chunky leading edge, very low aspect, but it did the job, it's a beginner's foil.
And that's where you knew Matt, was that through the Subheart, through foil?
Yeah,
Or not
Matt,
called foil surfing back then? Don't know.
Matt Barker-Smith, big shout out to you, Matt. Thank you so much. He's the one to blame for me spending all this money. He set me up with my first ever foiling equipment. I had a 125 litre Nash hoverboard with the GoFoil Maliko 280 and 200. Later I bought the Eva as well. Went through from the big Maliko tail to the first pedestal and the flat 18-inch tail, then went to the wingtips, then went to the Katie Maui tails. I think that was the start of my long obsession with stabs. I'm embarrassed to think of how many stabs I've got back in my cave back at home. But yeah, they've all got a purpose, and that sort of, because I'm a science teacher, I have a very analytical mind. I love just swapping things out and just seeing the differences. And right from the get-go, I realised how much of a difference
all these different
swapping out the tail stabs can make. And it's shimming and this, that and the other, but really, going from a flat high aspect tail to one with wingtips to one with a curve, the profile, it all makes a difference. And I've settled on, the tails for me now are the Axis progressive tails, because they've got such a range of sizes and they all perform so well. You can any size you want, and you're guaranteed the same performance characteristics, and you don't have to mess around with how does this one feel. It's just, the bigger it is, the more lift you've got, a little bit slower, smaller you go, the opposite's true, and you get down to the tiny ones, which is super fast and maneuverable, but retain all the grip and the control. And
it's getting pretty crazy now. There's so many different aspects to foiling that you can adjust and modify. And then we've got playing with different fuse lengths, different tails, different tail designs, different wing designs, aspect ratios, mast heights, shims. It's pretty cool.
Which I think is a reason why, because I watched your channel well before we ever had that first discussion 2 years ago now about a foil drive, because I was still learning a lot about foiling myself. And I enjoyed watching your videos and listening to basic explanations and seeing the result and whatnot. So you've come up through the ranks of all this gear, and you've been very generous with your time providing feedback to anyone on the planet that's got access to YouTube of what you do, how you do, what you feel, etc. And I think it's very important, because as someone who's also engineering minded and a bit of a nerd really,
best of us are.
surfing is it's a two-axis sport technically, unless you're really good and you're doing aerials, but it's technically two-axis. When you go to that third axis, which is height control with the foil and everything else that comes along with it, this is a sport that is it's not complicated, but it requires a discipline to understand what the wings and tech does, how it affects your riding experience, and the setups that you should or shouldn't use. And we really enjoyed watching your material well before we ever came into contact.
Do you know, I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I mean, I just love doing that sort of thing. And I think part of it was born out of frustration. For me, when I first started, there was nothing on YouTube. There were a few people who put out there just a few videos of them doing stuff.
Yeah.
And I would analyze the hell out of every, so I'd watch every video that's available. I'd watch so many times and just stand there on the beach and just try and mentally picture, you know, me doing it physically and embedding it in there. Yeah, I think partly I just wanted to share the stoke. Just this was something that I felt so enthused by, so passionate about.
The switch had been flicked in your brain of
mate,
just like
that
foiling
froth, it was just switched on and broke the switch off, threw it away. It was just crazy.
It's jammed open now.
Literally. So yeah, I mean, I just thought, what can I do to help other people to maybe make their experience in learning a little bit less painful? Because God, I mean, how many hundreds of jumps from the boat? How many paddle back in? How many times? I mean, for the longest time, I could jump off my boat or eventually the ladder that I concocted, pump out and then stuff it on the turn and then having to paddle back in. And the better I got at pumping, the longer the paddle back in, because it was like I could go that way, but I couldn't come back again. And
do you think because you were mainly learning to foil in Oman where there wasn't too many other guys doing it, and the world at the time, you could only go out in your boat and the beaches were closed and all that kind of stuff, your learning curve of learning to foil was pretty solo. Like, you didn't have too many people to bounce ideas off or get towed behind a boat.
There was me and one other.
But even just to get towed behind a boat, like that's how so many people learn to foil, obviously.
I think I wore the patience thin of quite a few friends, and especially my partner who had to drive for me. And when my kids came out to visit, you know, it was like, right, let's go out on the boat. Who wants to try foiling? Nobody puts their hand up. Come on, let's do it.
It's easy. Didn't you see me crash 50 times this morning?
Just so I could get my fix. No, it was certainly isolated. There's lots of kite surfers, quite a few sup surfers, like a smattering of proper surfers, because they're just there aren't that many conditions. I mean, there are some amazing surf spots in Oman, but you have to travel a long way to get there, so it's not practical from the day-to-day point of view. So behind the boats, jumping off of ladders and boats, and very light wind wing foiling. I mean, I started off with a 4 meter, and I think I got up on foil once. Before I was like on the computer going, what's the biggest wing available? And at the time it was a 7 meter, and I got that in, and that lasted a long time before it blew up. But you know, and that was definitely overuse. Really, that was a lot of pumping in very marginal conditions. And then of course I got the cheat code, which is, you know,
I was about to segue into that. So
because we haven't actually asked this question since you got here. How did you even come across?
Do you know what?
Because to add a bit of context to this too, like we had launched the website like 3 weeks before we actually like opened up orders. So it had only been public online for a very small period of time.
You
in
can't
Australia,
hide anything from me, mate. On foiling wise on the internet,
and then
I'm there.
Second ever order. First order New Zealand, second order Oman? Where's Oman? Where's a map? Like, who's this Dominic guy in Oman? How does he even know
you live where?
I think you called me, didn't you?
Yeah, because it was about 2 months till my term broke up, and I was going away for the summer holidays. And,
that's right.
And I was like, look, is it worth me getting now or waiting until I'm back from the holidays? And you quickly worked out how long the delivery would take. And you're like, look, mate, nobody should have to wait that long for a foil drive. Get it now. And again, I'm so glad that I did, because it changed my perspective on how I could approach foiling. So I was going to go back to the UK, and I had in my mind all this kit that I was going to need to be able to foil in Oman, which has got its own conditions. And because I got to use that first foil drive for 2 weeks before I went away, I was like, nope, I don't need that anymore. I can go straight onto that, and then instead of that, I'm going to get that. And you know, it's if I hadn't got the full drive before, then I would have come back with some of the kit wouldn't have been suitable.
Yeah.
So that saved me a lot of hassle. So
Because we did discuss that at the time. I said, I think if you are going to get access to it before you leave, your perspective of what is feasible to foil versus what you actually want to foil will change.
Well, it opens up conditions and areas that I wouldn't have dreamed possible for foiling that are actually better for foiling.
Yeah.
But yeah, the what was I've totally forgotten the first question that you asked.
It's how you came
how
across.
we even came
That's
across
it,
it.
right?
Where
Yeah,
did you
it was
come from?
literally just doing random searches on the internet for e-foils because
Oh, yeah.
I was at the stage where I knew that because we have so many flat, calm days in Oman, I knew that if I had an e-foil, even though I didn't really fancy the cost of it and even whether it was possible to get one shipped out to Oman, I knew that if I had one, I would at least be able to get on the water every day. And those days where it's even the 7 meter and the big 280 couldn't get me on the foil, I'd have something to do to. And it literally was to satisfy my fix of
because that switch had been thrown away, you've got to have something.
Addicted.
So I was searching for e-foils, and then somehow the algorithms spewed out this somebody. I'd assume it was Sykesy or one of you guys that it was just a little short YouTube clip of somebody motoring around, and I just thought, that's not an e-foil. What is that? And I saw the foil drive logo, so I just put into Google foil drive and got to your website. Literally didn't bother with the email. I just phoned you up and I was like,
Get me
what is this?
now.
What does it do? When can I get it? And yeah, the rest, as they say, is history. It was a very, very easy decision to make once I saw you guys doing what you were doing on it. I think it was a clip from Shark Alley, so it must have been you guys.
Yeah. Because back then it was only myself and Ben and Caitlin. There was only 3 people within the business. There's 11 people now, 11 full-time staff now.
Yeah.
But it was just funny how that all came about, and you've been very active since. And I think it's worth mentioning for anyone that's watching this. We've never actively sponsored you in any way. We haven't paid him to say anything.
You bought all your gear at full cost.
You
and
bought all
that
your
kind of
stuff.
Like,
I mean, in the last couple of months, we've sent you some little prototype bits and pieces, like the new hub and some propellers and bits and pieces. But Ben and I always made the conscious decision. We're like, this guy has been a wealth of knowledge for us before we ever met him, of his independent reviews of stuff. You talk candidly about it. There's no smoke and mirrors. It's just a guy who froths foil stuff, talking about what it does for him and what he likes and dislikes. So let's not tarnish any of that. Let's not even muddle with the magic. Let's just see what he comes back with, because maybe there are useful things that we can improve or work upon. So we just let you do your thing, and we were always like, when's the next video coming out? And you'd post these things and we'd watch it and we're like, oh, that's a great idea. So we just let you run with it, genuinely.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think sometimes my enthusiasm, I get a little bit carried away at times, and I'm like, this was amazing. Yeah, I mean, the video stuff that I put out there, like I said, I'm just super stoked if anybody finds it useful. And if there's something that I really enjoy, I don't hold back. I just, this is what I'm doing now. And from when I first got the assist, it actually meant that I was now successfully subfoiling on waves that I could never catch in the past. I mean, it wasn't even waves, it's just swell.
Did you jump straight into subfoiling or using it with the wing?
First of all, foil drive was solely for subsurfing. For wing foiling, I genuinely can't remember whether that was a suggestion from somebody or whether I just decided to give it a go, but I just got fed up with pumping my 7 meter, and just sometimes I'd get up onto foil, and then I think it just clicked, and I rigged it up. I was on my 110 litre Jimmy Lewis board, duotone slick 7 meter. I think I was probably on the Axis 1300, and I gave it. There's absolutely no hamming it up on the video. It was literally, I was holding the GoPro stick, I think propped up over my shoulder, And I was going, right, this is without full drive. And I pumped and I pumped and I pumped. And to my surprise, I did actually get up onto foil. But wow, it was one of those things where it was like a fine line. And there's not many times that you can do that.
Times,
I got seriously gassed at the end of it. And anyway, then I just came back onto the water and I said, okay, now I'm going to try it with full drive. And I pressed the button, pressure on the front foot, and suddenly I'm up on foil and release the trigger. And I'm like, I think I let out this huge like guffaw of laughter, and I go, "That was so easy!" And then, of course, once you're up, the apparent wind from the it's just all becomes easy. And then I figured out very quickly you can go down a wing size. I still like my 1300 in those super light wind conditions because you go too small on your foil and you're pumping the board so much to keep going, especially in the lulls. But I could go down a size. Now I'm going down a size and a half. So,
because the reason I ask is like, Paul and I we never thought anyone would want to use a foil drive for a wing. We personally came from the surf background, where it sounds like you more came from the wind sports background. Yeah. And it was like, why would you want to use a motor when you've got a wing? You've got all this energy being harnessed from a massive wing and the foil. But then we very quickly learnt, and again, you were one of the first to sort of try it because you had one of the first foil drives, that it can actually, access lower wind conditions. You can use smaller foils, you can choose smaller wings, and it just, again, opens up so many more options to get out and enjoy your time, and the safety.
The safety for me, like there is no rescue service in Oman whatsoever. I mean, it's a fairly safe place because it's always cross on, the coastline. It's not like it's jagged cliff forever. There's a lot of sandy beaches and bays. But really, if I'm winging and I'm always, nearly always I'm in marginal light wind conditions, it only has to drop by a couple of knots and I cannot get up onto to foil again. And if I'm, 2-3K off the coast, then just being able, knowing that I can pull that trigger, lie on the board and just power myself in, that's
I've heard some pretty funny stories of guys learning to wing and they've got their foil drive and they wing and wing and wing and they can't get back upwind, so they just lie down on their board and flag the wing behind them or tie it to their foot or something, and they just lie on the board and just enjoy the scenery and just motor back upwind and then go again. And it's like,
we've all been guilty of that.
Yeah, exactly.
That's like another application I hadn't even think about.
No longer.
This is what I love, because there's so many people out there just with their own perspective on it, and they'll try it in a way that I haven't thought about, that you haven't thought about, and then we're watching them now because of the joy of YouTube and social media and going, oh, that's a great idea, and then we can bring in elements that we wouldn't have thought about ourselves.
Perfect segue into smaller boards.
Well, before we do that, I will have to admit, and I admit my failures as readily as I put my successes out there to help others, is that I tried using foil drive on a negative volume board for winging, and wow, I couldn't get my head around that at all, because even with the box further up forward, sorry, let's start. So with the box at the back, obviously a negative volume board, you sit on it, kneel on it, whatever, and the back of the board goes under the water, you lose connection to the remote trigger. So I tried moving the box further forward, and it was a nightmare. It was a living nightmare. The box was in the way. I could lie on the board, pull the trigger, get myself going, but obviously the wing was then on the water, and that acted as an anchor, and I just went spinning around and just everything going wrong.
A lot happening.
So there are limits, and I think in super light wind conditions, as much as I would like always to use the smallest board possible, for light wind winging, the fact that I can get up, even with my big board, I'm still having fun. But then that was what triggered me to actually think of using it for.
And I think it's the persistence and the just willingness to just keep trying things.
I'm like a dog with a bone. I don't.
Work out what you can do and keep stepping it down.
Once your brain acclimatises to the push that you can get from it, it natively starts thinking, if it can do that, can it do this? And it makes perfect sense as to, because we've tried these things too, and it's always surprised us, wow, if you've got the right combo and set up, you can do some amazing stuff on some gear that doesn't initially make sense. And I think one of the biggest changes was when you got the Plus.
Yes.
Because you went from the Assist to the Plus, which is a different ball game from a thrust perspective and some other bits and pieces.
I mean, you say that, and yes, the Plus does make it easier and better in many ways, but the Assist, I have done everything that I'm doing now on the Assist. So it is possible, but you know, it's a smaller battery. The battery is, as you all know, less power output as the battery depletes. So the Plus, you don't have that issue. There is obviously the large battery is bigger capacity. So yeah, from that point of view, it makes it a lot better. But there's still the issue of the box needs to stay above water. So yeah, because I do a lot of wake foiling, and I love my small 4.0 and the small wings. And my ultimate goal was eventually to learn to prone foil. I knew that for me was my ultimate aim. But also there was the downwinding. Now, all right, Oman, we might not have very good waves. We do occasionally, but you know, it's not consistent. But we do have, although in the lower end of the sort of conditions, the scale, we do have very consistent downwinding conditions. There's always, like I say, this either northeast or northwest side-on conditions, and when it gets to, you know, 12, 15 plus, it's downwindable with a big foil, although using full drive has enabled me to go down in foil size now, finding my limits, but you know, conditions, you know, it surprised me how small I can go in foils. But yeah, for me to begin with, it was about opening up that downwinding on a smaller board. I don't have the technique, the paddle technique, or the strength. You know, I could spend a lot of time training, but you know, I've got a family, I've got work. When I get on the water, you know, I want to be enjoying myself. There's limited time that I can spend to training.
Become superhuman.
And at the end of the day, I you know, quite often I don't want to feel like I've done 5 rounds with Mike Tyson at the end of a session. You know, I don't mind, you know, coming in and feeling like, yeah, that was a hard session, feel good. But every time, no, that was just too much for me. So downwinding, yes, I did it first a lot with a sup full board and a big foil.
Because you did coaching with Jimmy, didn't you? James Casey?
I was, I like being a guinea pig. I was one of his first ever sort of online sort of students for sup downwinding technique. And
it was classic watching you guys like meet each other. It's like, Dom, James, and you're like,
that was pretty awesome.
It's so nice to meet you.
Again, 3 hours in Australia, and I meet James Casey, and I'm lucky enough to go out on the water and foil at the same time as him. It was just awesome. What was even more bizarre is he was asking me questions about, so you mount the foil drive box where? And I was going like, how does that work? And then he saw me doing it, and afterwards he was like, I think he actually said he was going to give it a go, see what it was like. So, wow, that was bizarre.
That'd be a combo.
I then switched to a 5.3 Sonova prone board, which is 43 litres, and tried downwinding with it. And this is with the Assist.
And you weigh, at this time?
82 kilograms.
So 82 kilos, and it was 43 litres.
43 litres, but it was 5.3.
So it's nearly half.
Yeah.
Okay,
And this is with the Assist, not the Plus. And
this is when we generally recommend positive volume boards because of that issue with the box sinking and losing wireless connection between the controller and the box. So.
Well, I tried it first with the Fanatic wing foil board. I think it was 5.0 by 75 litres, and it's just
again,
it
still
wasn't
negative.
It wasn't what I wanted to achieve. I wanted to go on a small, light, reactive board, and so I couldn't believe it when I got up and I did this. Literally the first downwind run I did was from the beach outside my house. I was intending to stop, if I made it, and I wasn't convinced that I was going to be able to do it, but I thought if I managed to do it, I'll stop at Kite Beach, which is like 4K down the beach, down the coast. And I got to Kite Beach and I was like, I'm going to go to the next bit. And I ended up literally 10K down the beach, and I was like, phone up my girlfriend and say, you know, you're going to pick me up from Azaba? Well, I'm actually at Almouge. Can you, you know, a little bit further for you to go? Yeah, just, you know, I'll be on the side of the road. And it just blew me away. It was like my first ever proper prone downwind run, 10K.
And sorry, this is Assist.
This is with the Assist.
And the box at the front of the board.
The box at the very front, way right up, almost on the nose.
Yeah.
And, obviously, I've changed that completely since. Yeah. And I was on the Takuma 1440, and it was so successful. I actually had, he's a good friend of mine, Chris, who was kite surfing at the time. He kite surfed right up behind me and going, "What are you doing? How are you doing this?" I was going like, "It's a motor." He's going, "Whoa, where have you come? Where did you start from?" I was going, "Good, bro." He's going, "You're mental," and just bombed off again. I was like, "Oh, okay." It must have been a really weird sight for for the other kite surfers, but anyone on the beach was like,
"This is I just way out, just cruising along down the coast." Yeah, it's still pretty weird to see.
Doesn't happen in Oman. It was, and then, when I got the Plus, that little bit of extra power and the extra consistency throughout the whole of the battery, by then I'd become an ambassador for Appletree Surfboards, and I tried it on my 60-litre Apple Slice V2, which, it's such a lovely board. And I rigged up the first time I used it with that board, I rigged the box just in front of my front foot, and I went out for a short session and I wasn't blown away by it, and then I thought, well, my front foot, there's enough space to the side, to the toe side rail of my front foot, so with the paddle mount, that perspex,
the base plate,
the base plate, that's it. It just enabled me to use the front foot strap inserts. The box
side.
was literally just off to the side of the toe side rail of my front foot, and I was amazed at the difference it meant. Yeah. It almost got rid of the swing rate entirely. Yeah. The weight seemed to like almost be not noticeable.
And this is moving it, a foot from the front of your.
It was literally it was at least a foot back, just over a foot back, and slightly maybe an inch or two to the side.
Yeah. Made a massive
difference.
Again,
I was thinking that it would upset my sort of roll balance, and no, I hardly even notice it there. And you can't lie flat on the board because the box is literally here.
Down one side, yeah.
I'm up holding the nose of the board with my hands. My elbows are on the deck pad. Yeah. So my chest is above the box, and it never rubs.
Because it's only a problem when you're first sitting in the water stationary. That's the only problem you have. That's the only time you have, not with this setup I'm saying, but in general, that's the bit that you've got to get past, is sitting stationary in the water with the board all sunk in the water because it's negative volume. You've got to keep the box
up. Not with a 60-litre board. When I went down in literage, yes. Yeah. Then you've got to start a little bit, just stretching your arms out a little bit, so my chest is
just
on the back of the board. Pull the trigger as soon as I've got
once
some
it gets going,
motion. Then I pull myself up to the normal position.
And then you jump up.
And then it's your business as usual.
Yeah.
So with that 60-litre board, I don't even have to do that because I'm lying on the board. The antenna is at the top of the box. So it's always out the water. Yeah. It makes it so easy. And then, of course, I went from downwinding, and I just thought, well, we've actually got some waves now because summer season, 3 hours drive down the coast is a brilliant surf spot. Yeah. All my videos on YouTube where I'm actually surfing proper waves, that is that spot. And I tried it the first time, it absolutely just blew me away. For the first time in my life, I was prone foiling. And this is a guy who can't even surf, for God's sake, My pop-ups were just, they must have made a proper surfer shudder. They were awful. It was sort of like pulling myself up onto my knees and then trying to shove my front foot between my feet and then sort of, okay, here comes a push from the wave, and then try and stand up. Yeah. And it was laughable to begin with. But, with everything, you start, a little bit weird, and then you refine it, you get better. And now, I can't, again, push myself straight into a pop-up, but it's knees, front foot, standing up, usually in one fluid motion.
Well, I think it's worth mentioning that you're not pushing straight into a pop-up because you don't need to.
Yes. It's a refined technique for foil drive.
Because that process of getting up to speed and getting on foil and having enough momentum to catch the wave can be so elongated.
Yes.
Because the motor's doing 80% of the work, and you're not frantically paddling trying to catch a very late wave.
Yeah.
It does actually give you this unusual and unique opportunity to stretch that pop-up period out from
Completely.
a second or two to, it could be
Oh,
5, 6,
It
7,
increases that
turbulent white
margin
water.
for error.
Yeah.
and
I mean-
you're starting way further out
Yeah.
than you would normally.
Yeah.
So, and it makes sense because the wave's a lot younger. It's not hasn't matured
Yeah.
into a bigger face. So
Longer
it's worth
rides.
mentioning that
Oh, yeah.
there's a reason for that too. Popping up instantly wouldn't really a huge.
And
usually
because
benefit.
I have tried prone foiling a few times, and you know, you as I'm sure you guys know, you pop up if you're slightly off balance, you are off, and,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
an instant
And you're
thing.
in such a critical zone of the
Yeah.
wave where there's so
Yeah.
much power, there's so much happening quickly. You've
Everything going on at
got
the
to be
same
on
time.
point.
Foil drive just gives you that extra time. You can think about things, you can make adjustments,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's all a lot smoother, a lot calmer, and like I say, a lot more margin for error. You can
Yeah.
make corrections.
Yeah.
But for me as well, I could position myself well away from everybody else.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I don't want, you know, I know
Crowded
I've got
lineups
a
in
foil,
Oman.
I've got a propeller, yeah. Well, not crowded lineups, but
Yeah.
there are people around.
Of course, yeah.
And in the sealer, believe it or not, in the whitewash anyway, Oman Surf School,
Right. Yeah.
there's a lot of learner foilers that, you know, if I fall off in that zone, there is a danger of you know, contact, and I don't want to hurt anyone. So
Yeah.
with foil drive, I can go well
Yeah.
away from everybody else.
Which is a
No
big point that we
danger.
always, and Paul and I discussed this sort of stuff at length when we were first setting up Foil Drive, of like, we have to be as a brand and as a product that's going to enable people to have this advantage and this cheat code, like we like to call it. We have to keep reminding and addressing people that it is super important that because you've got this cheat code, go away elsewhere and leave people alone in the surf zones, because you don't need to be there. You
It's
just
not
don't.
just safety; it saves your blushes, because there will be
Exactly.
some rather hilarious wipeouts, and you know, you're far away enough, nobody can see the worst of it anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's an important point. Like, that was one of the things that when I invented this thing, it was like, there's so many good waves that I can see, because we're not going to go into this now. This will be a separate video where Ben and I talk about our history, but I have invented a lot of electric things for the water over my time. And foiling was the only one that truly made sense to do this, because it had such a good relationship. But yeah, there's so many nice waves and breaks that if you look at, no one's on them because they're inaccessible. It's not because no one has the desire to ride them. It's just inaccessible. And that's one of the things we wanted to do is, I mean, we have some pretty crowded breaks in our local spot when it's in summer and it's nice. There can be hundreds of people out there. It was like, it'd be really nice to not have to get in the lineup with everyone else and compete for waves, and because some people can be pretty aggressive. It's just a bit unnecessary, but it's just life.
Yeah.
And when we started using the early prototypes and we started really doing it, it became so abundantly obvious to us that the technology was going to be like a cheat code, yes, but it doesn't need to be an unfair advantage. It can be used appropriately to put you in a position on a wave in a location where there is no one else.
Yep.
And you have your own area to play.
Yeah.
And you can see everyone else off in the distance still squabbling over the same takeoff points. We just removed ourselves from that entire equation and just went somewhere else.
Yeah.
And with foiling, the thing I love about it is you don't have to have that really aggressive peaking, breaking wave to enjoy yourself.
Yep.
On a surfboard, if it's mushy and a bit, dull, it's boring. You want that, more energetic wave. With foiling, you actually don't need that. There's actually a lot more fun well earlier on in the actual wave life cycle, further out, that is normally unobtainable. And that's one of the things I enjoy the most. And I was watching your videos and many of others on the internet, really encouraged to see people working that out for themselves and making use of it.
Yep.
And in turn, we actually, I think for the most part, free up breaks all over the world, remove congestion where it's, prior to the foil drive, the congestion is necessary. If you're paddling or proning or whatever it is, and you have no motor assist, you do need to be pretty much near or in the lineup to catch that wave energy to make foiling even possible.
Yeah.
We know this because we've done it.
There's always one guy who's catching 4 times as many waves as everybody else.
Yeah.
And the amount of times that I used to be, because you're right, there's not many surfers or foilers or whatever in Oman, but there are very limited spots. So when the conditions are suitable for sup surfing, the few of us that there are all there. And then I can remember, rocking up at a spot, catching a few waves, few people turn up, and then a few more people turn up. And then it's like, there's so few opportunities. But yeah, absolutely. With foil drive, I mean, I'm going in places that I never thought would be possible to foil, getting longer rides. And
that's where we're starting to see people calling it like foil driving. It's like, there's no wind yet. We'll go for a wing ding later, but we'll go for a foil drive this morning. The break is completely chockers. It's glassy and nice and clean, but the normal surf breaks are full. Let's go for a foil drive over there. That's not accessible by any other means. Let's go do that, and then when the wind comes up, we'll pull all the gear off and go winging later in the afternoon. And it's become its own little niche.
It really, you're right.
Part
I
of
love
the
that.
sport. It's
foil
like
driving.
It's
I really do like that, because
And that's not something we coined. That's people doing it. And they get these little crews of guys with foil drives, and it's like, let's go do that this morning.
And there's so many. I don't think there's a single foiling discipline that foil drive hasn't helped me with. I mean, winging, downwinding, sup foiling, prone foiling, even, believe it or not, even flat water pumping, because I mean, I've put out so many videos of, I use foil drive to ollie up onto the foil high on the mast, and then I pump around. And
we were doing that at the marina 2 days ago.
That is so much fun. It's good training without, getting hammered. It's brilliant for technique.
And it's time on foil. That's the biggest thing that we find talking to customers and shops and coaches and training schools and all that kind of stuff. Everyone knows that practice makes perfect, but if you only spend such tiny amounts of time actually foiling and a lot of time trying to get on foil, you're not really practicing that much.
So you've got to have time on the water.
And
that's what foil
all
drive
of
is
these
best
times.
for doing.
I had an interesting comment from a customer one day. I'd be interested to see what your opinion of this is. He said to me, it removed the panic. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, normally, if I felt like I was going to get on foil, it was like, I have to make the most of this because this is such a rare occurrence that if I stuff it up, he used to get really pissed off at himself because he missed the wave, lost the opportunity, and he'd go back out and have to try all over again. He's like, now I don't panic and I actually have a clearer mindset because I know if I get it wrong and I muck it up, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to scoot back out there and have another go.
I can relate to that. Yeah, for sure. It's you know, every time I go out with foil drive, I know I'm guaranteed to have a good session. I mean,
or at least extract what can be extracted.
Yeah. And before foil drive, when I was sup foiling, I would be like, I don't know, half an hour to an hour, I'd be pretty shattered, and my foiling technique would be off, and you come in, you're aching.
Got on foil 4 or 5 times, and
and foil drive 2, 3. I think my best was a 4-hour session on one batch, and that was the assist. You just literally, it's like a conveyor belt. You catch it, you foil in, you cruise control at 30-35%, and literally, I broke the 4-hour mark by I think 2 or 3 minutes. And I came in and I wasn't shattered. I was able to function, and I didn't fall asleep on the sofa with drooling.
And
as is my want.
I mean, I'm 36 and I'm not unfit, but I'm not like super fit either. Got 2 kids, busy, just not what I used to be in my 20s. And I love going out for 3 or 4 hours. I'd use 2 batteries though.
Don't get me wrong. Now I'm doing this partial e-foiling thing. I'm 3, minimum 2. If I don't get to use 2 batteries off, it's not a proper session. But I'm quite lucky because I can literally just after work, I can step out of my front door. I get back from work, I change, and I'm literally on the beach. So whether it's straight after work or in the evening, it's flat water.
And that's a good point, because yesterday we were all 3 of us and another customer came out foiling. And we only had you in SA for 4 days, and 2 of the days were
complete whitewash,
utter rubbish, and the other 2 days were still crap. But we went foiling anyway, there was no one else out in the water. No one.
Yeah.
Because it was, you look at it and go, not too hard. The wind was blowing quite strong, but it was across the swell. And we went anyway, where normally we'd be like, oh, it's just not worth it unless you were desperate. But we were all 4 of us were still out there. We rigged up accordingly because we knew we were going to have to be going really quick to stay with the wind swell because it wasn't a peaky enough face. But we were out there for what, 3 hours, something like that, slingshotting onto waves using max boost the whole time. But we still all had an absolute ball. And that's one of the other things I really like is I'm not having to pigeonhole these tiny little optimal weather windows and go, oh, I've got to go, I've got to pick the kids up. Or I've got to go to netball, or I've got to do something. We could still make something fun out of even, like yesterday was probably what, 3 out of 10 at best.
For you?
Yeah, for you, yeah.
But I was pretty stoked by that session actually.
Yeah.
It was that was good because I mean we very rarely get that. Okay, it was wide, long, sort of fat swell, but it was rolling in. And you know we have to have a cyclone somewhere off in the distance to get that. Otherwise we're
but to put it in
it's what you're
reference,
used to, isn't it?
We're still hundreds of meters offshore.
Way out of the
lineup.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't actually want to have been in close because it was quite aggressive white water by
really
that
was,
point.
yeah.
'Cause it's,
Right,
you know, it's still decent sized swell breaking.
Yeah.
But you can make something out of nothing too.
Yeah.
But also where we launched was upwind. There's a bay that you have to jump in the water in the bay, take the channel out, and then we were foiling, you get blown down the coast. Imagine paddling back into that wind at the end of a session.
Yeah.
That would have been an absolute nightmare. It was just like, oh, we got 15% battery left, let's poodle on home, catch a few into wind if we can, and we'll just poodle on home back to the safe, easy, nice bay where we can come in without going through the washing machine to get into the, you know, further down the coast and then walk back.
The spot where we've got good surf in summer in Oman, there is such a strong current, and you know I have tried prone foiling there before without foil drive, and 20 minutes I lasted before I was just shattered from constantly paddling to try and get to and then stay in the right position to catch the waves. I'm not paddle fit. I'm first to admit that, but who needs to be paddle fit, to be honest?
But in saying that, you're still knackered after a 4-hour foil drive.
That was
session
subfoiling. That was subfoiling in a different spot. But I mean, after a couple of batteries, prone foiling, I've had a good
it's still
workout.
A physical activity. But when I talk to people because they ring up and they want to know information, I say it takes the really brutal edge of having to generate huge amounts of thrust with your paddle or your arms or whatever it is to make catching the wave even feasible.
Yeah,
it takes the edge off. And it makes it smoother and easier. And you can still paddle and do whatever you like. Or you can not paddle if you can't be bothered and go further in. But I think the best way of talking about it without trying to make it into a marketing ploy is it just gives you the option to work the way you want to work with the swell. Whereas without that, you don't have much of an option. It's got to go closer in, more aggressive wave, and it's a very tight window of opportunity before you're catching white water or a steep face, or you get super fit and you can get them a bit earlier. But the window of opportunity is still relatively narrow. And the thing I get most out of it is I can push that window right out and make it easier for myself. I'm more than happy to make things easy for myself if I can.
Why wouldn't you?
Well,
Really
I mean,
is.
it's...
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Come in tired, exhausted sometimes, depending on how long I've been out there, but not battered.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like you say, taking that edge off of it.
But you're guaranteed to have a fun session.
Yeah.
Somebody said to me in New Zealand the other day when I was on the phone that, you know, yes, you don't have to like paddle as hard or do all that and be as physically fit if you don't have the motor, but you still come back worked out and
completely.
you know tired,
that buzz.
but you've guaranteed to have fun. You cheat yourself, you disguise a workout in fun, and you get back, you're still just as tired, but you've had a ball and you're like, that was good, I had super fun, I'm tired, I'm knackered, but I've had a lot of fun, as opposed to going, I'm beat, I got a few okay ones, I guess, and I got up a couple of times, but geez, I'm tired. Like,
well, it's allowing you to use the energy that you would have spent on paddling, the hard bit, on the fun bit, which
Pumping.
is riding the waves and pumping,
pumping and
absolutely,
turning
yeah.
and-
It is
yeah.
odd. Do you know what? Foiling is, I think it's a bit odd in that the pumping, which is hard work, but pumping to link waves is every bit as fun as riding the waves as well. And that was one of the things I was worried about using foil drive. Would I be able
Would
to
you
pump
lose
out
it?
to link? Would I, you know? And I mean, you've seen the videos. It's incredible in my mind that you can still pump. You can pull the trigger and have a little blast if you muck up your pump technique and you come down and the board's about to hit the water, or even it does slap down in the water. You pull the trigger and 9 times out of 10 I can just give myself a little bit of a boost. Maybe I do it intentionally to give my legs a bit of a break and then pop back up onto the foil, even against the wind, and then turn onto the next bump that's coming. And it's like, it really is that good.
And that's a byproduct of me being insanely obsessed with wanting to preserve the feeling of the sport as priority.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to go into this more detail in a separate video. I don't want to detract from that, but that is a direct byproduct of obsessing over trying to make sure that, depending on how you use it, the feeling of foiling is preserved as much as possible.
Yeah.
Well, you've done that.
And yet still get to have the benefits. Like you want to be able to eat your cake and have it too in a lot of things in life, and it doesn't always work out like that. But I think in this instance, it was one of those unicorn moments where, because you can slide the pod, really high up under the board, you can kind of do that for once. I can have the good bit, and then once I'm up,
It all just goes away.
it's a normal foil again. And that was the genesis. And I think everyone watching this, especially who owns a foil drive, will understand that that's part of the package, the whole idea. But we really did strive primarily to make something that was fun.
Yeah.
Not just a product for the sake of a product.
More of the good bits, less of the bad bits. It's a no-brainer.
And that's
Yeah,
a balancing
really is.
act with weight and battery size, size of the box, how big the motor is, how powerful the motor is. It's all a balancing act to try and find that what is enough thrust, what is enough runtime to make, when you do need the motor to taxi around or motor around, paddle around, get to places, how many takeoffs can you get, different people's body sizes, wings they want to use, conditions they want to use. How long is long enough to make it acceptable as a product and as a use case versus what is the impact on the performance that once you're done with the motor and you're on an energy source, whether that's a wing or a wave or a swell, how heavy can it be and where can it be positioned before you're really starting to take effect of it? And it's a massive balancing act between all of those things. And I think it's pretty incredible that we've managed to come up with something that's like 3.6 kilos and can be used.
That's with the biggest battery.
Yeah, that can be used
super light with a
flat
small
water, foil driving around, motoring around on a bigger wing for a reasonable period of time, and then go downwinding and pumping, or flat water pop-ups to practice pumping.
Yeah.
You can use the exact same thing in 2 very different use cases, and it's still an acceptable compromise in both, because what else can you do that's high performance legs versus high performance motor?
Finding that compromise is another part of the process that I love. So I should be thanking
Talking
you twice, really, because not just foil drive allowing me to foil where I wouldn't normally be able to, but it's also given me the opportunity to geek out seriously about what combination of boards, volume, size, foil
Foils,
size, style, stabs to go with them, and boy, the possibility, the combinations, it's just geek heaven. It really is.
Because that's a good point, because I think one of the reasons why foiling has taken off so much and a lot of people really enjoying it is fun to explore new things.
Sure.
And
Foiling's
foiling's three-dimensional.
still growing too.
And you've got wings
So
and
many
stuff
things
and
happening.
masts and different fuselage and all that sort of stuff. And but again, you add the foil drive element on top of that, it mixes it all up again.
Yeah.
Because you can try different things that, I know myself, I've tried wings and bits and pieces I never would have even considered trying, because it just was outside of my envelope of possibility.
Yeah.
This is the fact.
Yeah.
And I think I've really enjoyed that, and I know a lot of customers have made the effort to ring up and say that too, that they've enjoyed that element. And I think your videos are an illustration of that too, because you are helping people understand what you can do before and after.
Well, it's always a two-way street.
Yeah.
My visit here, you have, I think it was yesterday that you helped me break the code for, I think I'm going to be able to go back and use smaller, more high aspect foils where I didn't think it was possible back in Oman, because to get up on foil with my prone board, with the Art 999 or the 899, I find up until yesterday anyway, in my mind, I was like, okay, I need to have a reasonable wave to be able to give me that extra push. But yesterday, out on the water, you motored up to me literally on your board and foil drive and said, keep pushing the nose down, keep the board flat on the water for a lot longer, keep your speed building, and then you can do your normal slow
and
pop
starting
up.
a bit earlier before the swell too, so
So
you've got
much,
all that time
yeah.
up your sleeve. You don't have to wait till the wave's on top of you and then try and do everything really quickly.
Yeah.
You can start really early and wait for it to catch up to you, especially yesterday where they're fast rolling
Oh, there were
swell.
so many bumps that just went under me because I wasn't doing that.
Yeah.
I wasn't starting early enough. I wasn't I was trying to stand up too early. And as soon as you said that, and I was like, that's the code that I needed to now unlock me using the smaller arts when I'm back.
But there's a reason for that. No one does that normally.
Yeah.
Unless you have the foil drive pushing you.
Yeah.
That is completely counterintuitive.
You wouldn't be able to do it.
You are normally paddle, 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 now. It's got to happen now.
It's got to, yeah.
And I could only give you that information having learnt that myself over the last few months. Where I have also been using the prone board scenario, smaller board, and delving into that, not just doing it just something only because I was like, wow, I should try this too. This is really cool. And we've got people who work here that are just like really good foilers that will only touch their prone board, so they're doing that as well. But I could only give you that knowledge having learnt that myself. And Jamie, who works here, told me that months ago. He's like, man, you've got to do this. And so I started doing that. I was like, oh, this makes perfect sense. But there's no other video on the internet that explains that.
Yeah, I've
because
got
you
a
would
whole
never
load
do
more
that
videos
normally.
that I've got to do as soon as I get back. There's so much more information that I want to impart to the world.
Yeah.
And that's been such a highlight of my visit here. I mean, just meeting you guys, the whole foil drive crew, and seeing your setup, it's just been awe-inspiring. It really has. I mean, when I first saw the picture that you guys posted on the internet of at the time, your entire team.
Yeah, which is
it was
great.
like the how many people in that picture? 9 or 10?
9, I think, yeah.
And now there's more of you, and being able to meet all of you guys. And everyone's been super friendly and so helpful, and send me back with a goodie bag of little, things, and it's I'm so grateful to you guys being so welcoming and taking me out foiling and showing me around. But it's given me such a good perspective on how you make this product. I mean, every single thing you guys make yourself. You design it, you test it, you make it, you perfect it, and then, my God, the quality control. I mean, I've always known, that's one of the things that I've admired most about your setup. So focused on quality control and customer service, backup. I've never known, apart from maybe one other, my favourite foil company, there's been nobody else whose online presence from the owners of a company. You're always out there, you're always helping people, you're always giving advice, you're always doing your best for people, and I think that is, for me, the sign of, that's the epitome of how I think every business should be run.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Thank you, man.
Well,
the whole team does put an enormous amount of effort in, and I think we need to do better to show to the world what we do, how we do, and the crew, and we will do that next year.
I think people would love to see it.
There's a lot that goes on that.
Oh, it's like I had no idea as to everything that you have to do here to bring the product to the marketplace. But it really has been.
We just want to be real people. Like we want to be. It's something that, again, Paul and I discussed at length when we first set this up, and we said, yeah, let's do this. Like, how do we want to go about it? What sort of brand do we want to develop and build? And we're all real people. All the guys out the back and the girls that work for us, they're all real people too, and we want to highlight everyone's efforts and the fact that we actually care about people using our products. Like, there's a moment in my mind that's just will be glued there forever. Arrived in Sydney on one of our very first sort of outside of Adelaide demo day things. It's, you know, on the other side of the country. We rocked up, spoke to a few guys there that we knew that had foil drives, and you get to the beach and there's like 15 people pulling foil drives out of their car, and they're all coming out going, "Oh, Ben, so nice to meet you. Like, I can't tell you how much the foil drives helped me get into foiling more, get my friends into it. Now we've got this whole big crew and we're loving it. Like, let's get out in the water and go foil." And it's like, we forget as well, we close this box up, we slap a sticker on it and push it out to the postman. And then you see a bit of
more
stuff
involved in that,
course,
as I've learned over the last week.
And then you see a bit of stuff online and people saying, "Oh, you know, I've got my foil drive and I'm doing this and that." But, you know, it's so crazy and hectic for us here too that we forget that it's a product that people are going out and enjoying and loving. And it's so cool when we get to see that. So we want to really encourage that whole, actually come out and meet people that use these products, meet people like yourself who have been so helpful for us as well, and just repay that favour. And we're just real
It's sharing the
people
froth. It really is.
Yeah.
You know, everybody here wants to just share the passion about foiling and what foil drive can do.
Yeah.
I'm just seeing what you know, Jamie and James are working on, just attention to detail. And look, Dom, this is, and explaining to me how this is going to improve things, and that hub that draws the water in to the propellers, your upgraded hub for the back of the motor, for the aluminium props. I mean, that's just superb, you know, to think that you can improve on something that I thought was awesome already.
I mean, it's not super high tech, but what people need to understand is that manufacturing's hard. It's really
I had no idea.
really hard. Like,
From Australia.
the greatest mind on earth, you know, in my opinion, Elon Musk, says exactly that. People underestimate how hard manufacturing is. Building prototypes is easy, manufacturing is difficult, and especially a product like this that is still technically low quantity in the world of, you know, manufacturing where people make millions of things. It's a difficult balance of trying to make something in low volume.
Yeah.
We also have the most insane setup, which is retrofit to existing gear.
How many pods do you have now?
59 as of yesterday.
59 different size pods. That's
It's
crazy.
actually really hard to do that. And then produce it in low quantity at a very uneven scale. Like, the amount of Axis pods we would sell relative to some other brands is crazy.
Yeah.
So we put a huge amount of effort and time and expense into making that possible, and whilst all at the end of it, still trying to keep the actual kit price as affordable as possible. And I really do genuinely mean that we try to keep the price as low as we can.
Yeah.
Some people might look at it and go, "Oh, it's expensive." Well, I can tell you, in reference to other things that are out there that are 4-5 times the price or whatever it ends up being, yes, they're different products, but we really have tried super hard to keep it obtainable.
Yeah.
Yet it's still made in Australia by people who have Australian wages.
Yeah.
And in a micro scale economy of bits and pieces, like it's a massive undertaking. And the only reason we do it is we personally, or myself, I can speak for myself, personally just wanted to have more fun.
Yeah.
Like, the company only exists because we wanted to have more fun. And then other people saw us having fun and like, well, we want to have fun too. And it literally built from there. So the genesis of the whole product and company is built on good intentions.
Oh, that comes
Just
across so
spread the froth,
clearly.
you
Yeah.
know, and I think that's can only be, it has to be genuine.
Yeah.
And we want to be able to like help and support and back up the product too. For somebody who lives in the US that we've never met before on the beach, we want to, you know, deal with if there's any little issues that come up or whatever, like you walking up to me at the beach and go, "Hey Ben, I dropped my motor and I broke this little part." We're going to help you out because we're face to face. We want to have as much of that kind of concept or thought for anyone in the world, doesn't matter where they are. So that takes a lot of time and effort from people, and your videos and things like that have always been really great assistance to us to help, because this whole sport and this whole technology and all that kind of stuff, it's all still growing. As I said, we never thought anyone would want to use them winging, or we never thought that people might like to have a really lightweight sort of flat water practice turns, practice pumping, all that kind of stuff. They're all use cases that we never thought was coming. And
the YouTube video thing that I do, I had no idea that people were going to actually message me and say, thanks, this really helped. By the way, I've got a question.
Yeah.
And I'm just super happy to help anybody, because like you say, it's all about sharing the froth. It's all about helping people, you know, making everything more accessible. But it's just mind blowing. My son, when he first was logged onto my YouTube channel, he goes, "Dad, you've got 1,000 hits for this. What is going on? You're old. You can't be doing this." And I go, "Well." When you're this enthusiastic about something, I think that comes across.
Yeah.
And I would not waste my time doing YouTube videos or anything of that ilk for anything that I wasn't super enthusiastic about.
Yeah.
You know, this is a genuinely good product.
Yeah.
It's genuinely helped me in so many ways, and I just want everybody to know about it. I really do. It might not be for everybody. You know, if you want to do nothing but e-foiling at top speed, like you said to me before, buy an e-foil.
Yeah.
But with this product, as you said, it's a retrofit. It can fit absolutely any foil brand out there. You can do so much more with it than what an e-foil will let you do. But you can still do some e-foiling if you want to. It's so versatile. Yeah, I'm
helping people get into all the different aspects of foiling. Again, we just want people to have more fun. Like guys that are more into surfing are starting to try and get into winging, and then vice versa, because
every discipline,
if it makes it easier, then why not? So I guess like that's a good segue into, like, you know, part of the reason you're over here, you know, this week. You wanted to come, you had some time off, wanted to come, you know.
Oh man, yeah, just had a half-term holiday. I wanted to do some foiling, and you know, you guys made the offer to come out and spend some time with you, and I'm like, yeah. Okay, that is so cool.
I think I baited you. Like,
yeah,
come to Australia. All right, let's do it.
I didn't need asking twice. Yeah, that was absolutely, you know, opportunity of a lifetime. So,
and as Paul mentioned earlier, like up until this point, we've never like told you what to say about the product, or you've purchased all the product yourself, all that kind of stuff. You've become a very, you know, incredible ambassador and a sharer of knowledge. You're a teacher by trade, after all. And, you know, we just, especially after meeting you for a week and hanging out with you and getting so much more information flow between us, you know, in such a short period, you know, we've come to the realization that we should just all work together and, you know, help share that knowledge too. And
well, before I caught my flight, my fiance said to me, she said, "Dom, just rein it in a bit. You know, don't be full on. You don't want to put them off." and I come out here and I realised very, very quickly I didn't need to rein it in, because you guys are all just as full on as I am. I just slotted in very easily and just felt like I'm at home.
Yeah.
Like-minded people.
It's been awesome to have you over here, and sorry we've driven you all around the country and all over the shop.
Don't be sorry, mate. Thoroughly enjoyed it.
It's been a really awesome time having you over here and getting to know you a bit better, and it's been cool to have this chat and like find out more of how, and that's what we want to encourage everyone to do too. Like there's so much unknown stories of how people got to where they are, and so many different perspectives. So many people are trying different things. The sport's got a long way to evolve and develop, and
exciting times.
It's crazy to see where things are going.
And I think it's fitting too. We're not a heavily marketing orientated brand. We don't try and make flashy videos and have these people doing backflip 9,000 aerial one-on. It's not what we are. We keep it real. We want to keep it genuine, because people can see how they'll slot into being able to use it. And that's why I've always liked your content, because it's just so down to earth, realistic. There it is, no smoke and mirrors. And I could see myself using that wing and that wing ding on that board based on what you've said, and knowing that I'm going to have a reasonable chance of having a similar experience.
I'm going to name drop once, because I'll never have this opportunity ever again. But a friend of mine sent me the link to one of the Progression Project podcasts and said, "You've got to listen to this because you're going to mention them." I'm like, what the hell? It was Katie Maui, and I've as you know, I'm a big advocate of his rear stabs.
Yeah.
And we've had a few chats, and not that many, but you know, it's always great when you come across somebody who is so good, but so willing to help everybody else out. And we've had a few chats, and I listened to the podcast, and at one point he goes, and I really want to mention Dom Hoskyns, watch his YouTube channel, because he's a science teacher, so he gets the technical side of it. And he said, I really enjoy watching videos of people like him who are average foilers. And do you know what? I've never been more happy to be an average foiler. I was going, yes, that's my niche. Yeah. I'm happy there in reality. Because I mean, I think that's probably why people do watch my videos, because I am not a pro, and I I'm on a very steep learning curve, and doing the videos actually helps me to get my head around stuff, because I have to analyze it, and I have to think about how I'm presenting it or explaining it, and sometimes I get it wrong, and I've been called out a few times saying that actually, Dom, you're wrong on that because of this, and I'm okay, all right, I'm happy to take any advice from anybody, and it's a learning curve for me. And the more I do of this, the more I seem to enjoy it. So as long as it's well received, I'm going to carry on doing it.
Yeah, I think there's exciting times ahead, and I think we'll wrap this one up. But It's been, as you said, or as I said before, it's been awesome to have you here. It's been a pleasure. Let's see what happens over the next few years. It's got the whole sport and industry and everything's got a long way to go, and there's some pretty cool stuff happening all over the place. So it's cool to be a part of it.
Indeed. Nice one. Cheers.
Cool, guys.
Good stuff.
Cheers.
See you, everyone.